Hi guys, what is aperture or f-stop? People use both terms. Aperture is the opening in the lens that actually controls how much light comes through. Aperture is measured in f-stop, like f5.6, f7, f11. A smaller f-stop typically means more light is let in. A larger f-stop typically means less light. So an f1.2 would be a really bright lens that's wide open that allows a lot of light in, where an f8 is a really dark lens. Not a lot of light gets in. So if I took pictures of Kristen at 80mm at different f-stops, f1.8, f2.2, f3.5, f5, f8, f11, f16, not only does the light change, but so does the depth of field. A large f-stop has a very wide depth of field, where everything's in focus, while a small f-stop has a very small depth of field. So for example, if you're shooting portrait photography and you want a nice bokeh background, soft, sparkling lights, you can control that with your depth of field, controlled by your f-stop, also known as your aperture. Confusing, right? It's really not. So a wide aperture has a very shallow depth of field, while a narrow aperture has a very wide depth field. So if you're shooting landscape photography, you typically want to use a very wide depth of field or a very large f-stop. This keeps everything in the scene in focus. If you're shooting macro photography, if you're shooting tiny little bug, you'd also want to use a wide depth of field to make sure the entire bug is in focus. If you're shooting an event or even portrait photography, you may want to use a very small f-stop, much like the photos of Kristen. So let's recap. A very small f-stop is a wide aperture. A very large f-stop is a small aperture. A very wide depth field where everything's in focus is controlled by a large f-stop. A very small depth field where just your subject is in focus is controlled by a small f-stop. If you're looking to do portrait photography, you'll find that lower f-stop are typically more expensive lenses. This is because they give a beautiful soft glow. I hope this clears things up. I'm sure it doesn't. Is it snowing where you're at? It's definitely snowing here. It's cold out. I'm hoping for a foot. You can bet I'll be taking pictures. See you next time.